Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: far from Israel, Australian Jews like me are on high alert. U.S. Navy sailor pleads guilty to accepting $15,000 in bribes from China. MGM hackers waited for days before issuing their ransom demands. U.S. condemns Myanmar refugee camp strike, calls it military attack. Hamas terror tactics test Israel's war strategy. Far from Israel, Australian Jews like me are on high alert. The Sydney Morning Herald. The Jewish community in Australia is on high alert following an incident at the Sydney Opera House where a group of protesters shouted anti-Semitic slurs in the presence of the police. The author, a Jewish Australian, points out that anti-Semitism is not about Israel, but rather a deep-rooted hatred of Jews. She argues that being Jewish does not automatically make someone a Zionist, and that the term Zionist is often used as a code word for Jew. The author emphasizes that Jews are a diverse group with a range of political views, and that anti-Semites do not distinguish between them. U.S. Navy sailor pleads guilty to accepting $15,000 in bribes from China. The Guardian. A U.S. Navy sailor has pleaded guilty to accepting bribes from a Chinese intelligence officer in exchange for photographs of unclassified private U.S. military information. Petty Officer Wenheng Thomas Zhao admitted to sending his Chinese handler plans for U.S. military exercises, operational orders, and electrical diagrams and blueprints for a radar system. Zhao faces a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. Another Navy sailor, Jean Chao Wei, was also arrested in August on similar charges. MGM hackers waited for days before issuing their ransom demands. Bloomberg. MGM Resorts International CEO Bill Hornbuckle has revealed that his company refused to pay a ransom to hackers who broke into its computer system. The U.S. casino chain was attacked in early September, with the perpetrators demanding payment for the return of stolen data. However, MGM had already put in place measures to counter the attack and was able to rebuild systems, meaning that Hornbuckle chose to ignore the ransom demand. U.S. condemns Myanmar refugee camp strike, calls it military attack. Reuters. The United States has condemned a reported military attack in Myanmar on a refugee camp near the border with China. The attack, believed to have been carried out by the ruling military, resulted in the deaths of at least 29 people, including women and children. The U.S. State Department expressed deep concern and condemned the military regime's ongoing attacks, which have claimed thousands of lives since the coup in February 2021. The attack on the refugee camp is one of the deadliest on civilians since the military seized power. The Kachin Independence Army, which has been in conflict with Myanmar's military, runs a base near the camp. The military denied responsibility for the attack. Hamas terror tactics test Israel's war strategy. Washington Post. With the recent outbreak of violence between Israel and Palestine, a debate has unfolded about Hamas's long-term strategic aims and what impact the offensive will have on the politics of the Middle East. There is no consensus on whether terrorism works, although it is widely agreed that the promotion of terror and fear is successful. However, on coercing a government to make policy concessions, terrorism has far less success. Peter Krause, a political scientist at Boston College, suggests that Hamas is a strategic group that has been very strategic in its use of violence over the years. The decision to attack civilians and take hostages was designed to drive Israel to retaliate with such force that the world turns against the Israelis. Hamas also aims to be seen as the standard-bearer of Palestinian resistance across the Arab world. Although some leaders have called on Israel to show restraint in its response to the attacks, there is little precedent for turning the other cheek in the face of an assault on civilians. Terrorist groups will often succeed in gaining publicity, freedom for imprisoned comrades, and legitimacy for their causes. However, almost never does a terrorist group succeed in changing policy by attacking civilians. How Israel's feared security services failed to stop Hamas's attack. New York Times. Israeli intelligence and military officials have admitted to a series of failures that led to the successful incursion into southern Israel by militants from the Gaza Strip on Saturday. Despite detecting increased activity on some of the militant networks they monitor and sending an alert to soldiers guarding the border, the warning was not acted upon. Shortly after, Hamas sent drones to disable the Israeli military's communications stations and surveillance towers along the border, preventing remote monitoring of the area. The drones also destroyed remote-controlled machine guns installed on border fortifications. These failures allowed Hamas militants to approach and blow up parts of the border fence, creating gaps through which thousands of Palestinians walked. The incursion resulted in the worst breach of Israel's defenses in 50 years. Israeli officials have cited a number of intelligence and logistical lapses, including a failure to monitor key communication channels used by Palestinian attackers, over-reliance on easily shut-down surveillance equipment, and a failure to adequately cluster commanders and ensure communication with the rest of the armed forces. She was searching for her biological parents. What she discovered was devastating. The Sydney Morning Herald. SBS's Every Family Has a Secret is a show that explores the hidden pasts of participants' families. Hosted by Noni Hazelhurst, the show delves into the secrets and mysteries that have been eating away at individuals for decades. Participants travel the world in an attempt to trace their heritage, uncovering shocking revelations along the way. The show aims to present the truth, regardless of whether it is a glamorous or tragic story. Hazelhurst states that the participants are prepared for whatever they may discover, as their desire for knowledge is so strong. The show often reveals secrets that have been kept hidden for generations, as past generations were bound by societal taboos and social classes. The show's genealogists and historians help participants piece together their family history, leading to emotional and surprising discoveries. Every Family Has a Secret provides a unique opportunity for individuals to uncover their true identity and gain a sense of peace and relief. Hamas leaves trail of terror in Israel. New York Times. Palestinian gunmen from Hamas have attacked Israeli civilians across southern Israel, killing more than 1,000 people, including women and children, and abducting an estimated 150 more people. Hamas is said to have targeted familiar places on a Saturday morning, such as homes, the middle of towns, and even an outdoor festival. Israeli soldiers have been recovering bodies and finding evidence of the attacks from security camera footage, cell phone videos, and the accounts of survivors. One video shows two armed men breaking into a kibbutz, shooting the occupants of a car, and then removing 3 bodies from the vehicle. The evidence also shows that Hamas gunmen shot at civilians in Sderot, leaving 7 dead at a bus stop. Israeli soldiers have been checking for traps and pulling out the dead from houses and other locations in Kfar Aza. Many civilians and soldiers have been killed in the border region, with one video showing Palestinian gunmen crossing the border fence and heading towards the Nir Oz community. After the attack, it was noticed that many of the community's residents were missing. The evidence emerging from the attacks is a testament to the violence that has been occurring in the region. A brief history of Gaza's 75 years of woe. Reuters. This article provides a timeline of Gaza's recent history, highlighting major milestones and events that have shaped the current situation in the region. It begins with the end of British rule in 1948 and the influx of Palestinian refugees into Gaza. It then discusses Egyptian military rule in the 1950s and 1960s, the Israeli military occupation in 1967, the first Palestinian uprising in 1987, the Oslo Accords in 1993, and the Second Palestinian Intifada in 2000. The article also mentions the evacuation of Israel's Gaza settlements in 2005 and the isolation of Gaza under Hamas control in 2006. It concludes with the recent conflict in 2023, in which Hamas launched a surprise attack on Israel, resulting in heavy airstrikes and destruction in Gaza. The article emphasizes the cycle of conflict and the impact it has had on Gaza's economy and population. Winnipeggers with ties to Middle East watch in horror as conflict between Israel and Hamas escalates. CBC. As the violence between Hamas and Israel continues to escalate, Winnipeggers are living in fear for their loved ones in Israel and the Palestinian territories. Jenny Menashk, a former Winnipegger, is currently in Israel helping gather supplies for soldiers heading to the front lines. Menashk reassures her family back in Canada that they are safe, but emotionally they are in shock. Rana Abdullah, who founded the Canadian-Palestinian Association of Manitoba, was celebrating her daughter's wedding in London when the conflict broke out. She is overwhelmed with the news and worries about her loved ones in the region. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6 Degrees world, here to bring you the latest news and analysis from around the globe. Today, we've seen a range of stories that highlight the diverse and complex nature of our world. From anti-Semitic incidents in Australia to the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, there is much to discuss and ponder. First, let's address the rise of anti-Semitism in Australia. It is disheartening to see that even far from Israel, Jewish communities are still targeted by hate and discrimination. As the article points out, anti-Semitism is not just about Israel, but rather a deep-rooted hatred of Jews. It is important to remember that being Jewish does not automatically make someone a Zionist, and the term Zionist is often used as a code word for Jew. This highlights the need to recognize the diversity within the Jewish community and not lump them all into one category. Anti-Semites do not distinguish between Jews with different political views, and it is crucial for us to stand against such prejudice. Moving on, we have the case of a U.S. Navy sailor who pleaded guilty to accepting bribes from a Chinese intelligence officer. It is concerning to see foreign agents infiltrating military systems and obtaining classified information. This incident serves as a reminder of the importance of maintaining strong cybersecurity measures and vetting processes within our defense systems. It is crucial for governments and military organizations to constantly adapt and stay one step ahead of these threats. Next, we have the attack on a refugee camp in Myanmar, which the United States has condemned as a military attack. The ongoing violence in Myanmar since the coup earlier this year has claimed thousands of lives, and it is disheartening to see innocent civilians, including women and children, becoming victims. The international community must continue to put pressure on the military regime to stop these attacks and ensure the safety and well-being of the people in Myanmar. Shifting our focus to the conflict between Israel and Hamas, we see the complexities of the situation play out. Hamas's terror tactics are a test for Israel's war strategy, but it is important to note that terrorism rarely succeeds in changing policy through attacks on civilians. However, Hamas's strategic use of violence aims to gain publicity, freedom for imprisoned comrades, and legitimacy for their cause. As the violence escalates, it is crucial for leaders to show restraint and work towards finding a peaceful resolution to this conflict. Speaking of the conflict, we also see how Israel's security services failed to stop Hamas's recent attack. Despite detecting increased activity on militant networks, warning signs were not acted upon, allowing Hamas militants to breach Israel's defenses. This is a reminder of the importance of intelligence sharing, effective communication, and constant vigilance in maintaining security. It is essential for countries to learn from such failures and make necessary improvements to prevent future attacks. Finally, we have a heart-wrenching story from the show Every Family Has a Secret, where participants search for their biological parents and uncover shocking revelations. This show highlights the power of knowing one's true identity and the emotional journey it can be. It also sheds light on the societal taboos and social classes that may have hidden these secrets for generations. The opportunity to uncover the truth and gain a sense of peace and relief is truly remarkable. In conclusion, today's news stories remind us of the complexity and diversity of our world. From rising anti-Semitism to cyber threats, military conflicts, and personal journeys, there is much to discuss and ponder. I encourage you, my observant audience, to share your thoughts and questions. What are your perspectives on these stories? How do you see them shaping our world? Let's engage in a lively discussion and continue to broaden our understanding of the world we live in. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.